The Sheriff of Ardonne had one fatal flaw. He was bound by a belief in superstition and perversion. He would often be seen in his nightshirt upon the darkened wood, searching for treasures of sorcerers and alchemists. He was obsessed with achieving immortality. His chants and rituals had advised the elementals from far and wide, and he was keen on disrupting the night dances of the fairies beneath the forest, even daring to chop down the solitary tree in the plain, a clear domain of the fairies. It is said that such would incur the ire of the fairies upon such fools. Indeed, this was certainly the case. I had no difficulties in arranging the assistance of the fairies, although their motives are sometimes suspect. Never in vengeance do they falter, and never are they subdued, and only in this matter are they ever united. United they were against the vile Sheriff of Ardonne. The mighty lords of Ardonne, although he may have subdued them, and indeed he had, his waymen had made travelers into corpses, and their riches stolen and piled into his vile stash. The Sheriff of Ardonne had gotten rich, but had yet to become immortal. And yet the fairies were not impressed, certainly not, and neither were they subdued by the sordid figure of Ardonne. And the wolves had watched his dark thieveries in the wood, and the hare and the fox, they tread lightly in his path, and all the creatures of the wood were aghast at the merciless men who lay low, waiting to ensnare. The pall of gloom was evident in all of Ardonne. The sunny meadows, where life itself frolicked with no cares, had stilled, and took notice of the sadness of Ardonne. While King Richard had rode off to battle infidels in the desert, an insidious evil lurked within the kingdom of Ardonne. The Sheriff of Ardonne was a poultice to a wound, and drawing poison and sending it forth through the air, the meadow, and the forest alike. To eliminate the sheriff would not suffice, as he had planted the seed of evil and tended to it with the utmost care, and the fruit of which must return to its sender. But the sheriff was prospering beyond his dreams, and only the return of Richard could halt his heinous ways. And the keeper of the crown, the Duke of Fromme, and the Lady Anne were innocents of the realm, and blind to the workings of the sheriff and the people The woodsmen, the artisans, the bakers, and the smiths were becoming impoverished by his heavy tax. Ripe and plump sat the Sheriff of Ardonne, who thought little of ending his wretched schemes. And little did the sheriff know of the vileness he had spread. And little did he care about such things as fairies and nymphs of the wild, the boars, nor the fox, nor the mole. His eyes were on gold and riches, and he loved the adulation feigned upon him by his victims, trapped in a snare of his making. Even the sorcerers and the alchemists feared his anger, as they were quick to supply the sheriff with the fruits of their rituals. And so the tools of battle against the Sheriff of Ardonne would begin with the great laws, the laws of which the sorcerers trembled before. The sorcerer of Ardonne, one Pablo, was receptive to my proposal. As the sheriff has commanded the sorcerer to perform rituals and perform charts and perform all manner of chanting and all manner of fairies involved to protect his deeds from the eye of discernment and the birds of the air. As were the elementals and fairies offended by the Sheriff of Ardonne, few were his friends, and many were his henchmen. When next did the sheriff approach the sorcerer of Ardonne, Juan Pablo, the sorcerer would use his wisdom to at once obey and sit upon the desires of the Sheriff of Ardonne. As was the custom of the sheriff, he would arouse from slumber at 3 a.m., the time of the Fairies' dance. It is here he would demand that the fairies spin his evil fine cloth. His evil turned into a very fine cloth by these fairies. And he would don the cloak of innocence amidst his offenses to the very creation itself. His desire for immortality drove him to the elementals and the fairies and the sorcerers, far and wide from Ardonne. But the creatures of the wood bore no part of the scheme of this sheriff, and they fear not any man of any sort, and they were keen to assist me in my plan to expose the evil Sheriff of Ardonne. The sheriff ruled with a merciless iron fist, and his dungeons were full and laws trampled upon by this wastrel, the evil one, the one who took advantage of the absence of Richard and implemented a tyranny. And the rightful king, King Richard, was far away. The nostrils of the alchemist Zor curled. He was a wild-haired man, donned in a brown robe, with a hemp sash. The wolves troubled him greatly. The wild sorcerer required but a hair from the Sheriff of Ardonne to accomplish his craft. And this was easily acquired from his pillow by the fairies, while the sheriff had wandered seeking herbs from the wood. The fairies offered the hair to the owl who guarded it until the moment needed, sending the offensive lock of unruly hair to the pigeon, who often flocked near the sorcerer's hovel. Once obtained, Zoar had arranged his amulet in a fortnight. The talisman was in place on the coach of the Sheriff of Ardonne. The talisman would ward off any protection the sheriff may have acquired from his ventures with all the fairies in the wood, and provide the sheriff a false sense of security. The cries for mercy and the cries for justice, although seemingly unheard, were heeded, partly by my own command, as I am the watcher, and I watch, and I do what I can. And now, I was here, and the screams from the dungeon Richard's brother Fromme, the acting king in name only, was but a vassal of the evil of the Sheriff of Ardonne. And as the moon had emptied its cup from its light and was returning to fill it again, to serve the nighttime world, a full journey of the moon had passed when word of success was announced by the raven near the fairy tree. Word soon spread of the wondrous news that King Richard was indeed returning to Ardonne. Perhaps it was a whisper in a dream that aroused the king, causing Richard to cease his battles against the sultans and return. Meanwhile, the Sheriff of Ardonne was unaware of such news. With his newfound sense of invincibility, he was urged on by the sorcerer of Ardonne, Juan Pablo, who was unaware of the workings of Zoar. And the Fairies, who spun the cloth of innocence for the sheriff's robes, spoke highly of their work. The Sheriff of Ardonne was emboldened to do even greater evil than before. He had withdrawn his men from the distant mounts, where he had kept them at watch in case Richard would return. Although the people of Ardonne were unaware, behind the scenes, in the mysterious dark, in the underworld and the world of fairies and spores and of the small wee people, all worked together to bring about the return of King Richard. And surely he was on his way. Be sure to listen to the next episode of The Watcher as the Kingdom of Ardonne will be surprised by the sudden return of their mighty king. And he could not have come at a much more necessary time, as the Sheriff of Ardonne had clamped his iron rule and his tyranny was almost unbearable.